I stood there looking at a gleaming white marquee tent, a portable dance floor, and dozens of folding chairs arranged neatly beneath my 200-year-old oak tree, while the president of the local homeowners association stood on my land in a silver gown, telling me to move my pickup because it was ruining the sight lines for her niece's stolen wedding venue. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't lose my temper. I simply walked down to my barn, climbed onto my old faded green tractor, and started up a 2,000-gallon manure spreader filled to the very top with the strongest, most eye-watering liquid dairy fertilizer in the entire county. My name is Elias. I'm 48 years old, and I run the 60-acre farm my grandfather bought 70 years ago. But before I explain how this woman's pristine, hijacked high society wedding turned into a full-blown disaster of drifting brown mist and destroyed stilettos, you need to understand how things reach that point. Because you don't just accidentally spray a string quartet with liquid cow manure. You have to be pushed right to the edge. My grandfather bought this land 7 decades ago. Back then, it was nothing but dirt roads and dairy farms stretching for miles in every direction. Now, it's just me, 60 acres of rolling pasture, surrounded by a massive housing development that crept up along my eastern boundary like a slow-growing fungus. They call it whispering pines. There aren't any pine trees, and the only whispering comes from neighbors gossiping behind vinyl fences. I don't mind having neighbors. Not at all. You stay on your side of property line. I stay on mine, and we give each other a small wave when we pass. That's the country way. But Whispering Pines wasn't built for country people. It was designed for folks who want to look at the countryside without any of the reality. That's where Brenda comes in. I first met her on a Tuesday morning in early April. I was repairing a fence post near the property line, minding my own business, when I heard gravel crunching behind me. I looked up and saw a woman striding straight toward me. She was dressed in crisp white capri pants, a salmon-colored blouse, and a visor that cast a shadow over her tightly clenched jaw. She clutched a plastic clipboard to her chest like it was something sacred. She stopped exactly 2 inches from the old rusted wire fence, glanced down at her spotless white tennis shoes, then looked up at me with a glare. No greeting, no introduction. She just lifted the clipboard and tapped it with a perfectly manicured finger. "You have a commercial vehicle parked in plain view," she said, her voice sharp like metal scraping stone. "That is a violation of the neighborhood aesthetic guidelines." I glanced over my shoulder. About 50 yards away, completely on my property, sat my tractor, a big, worn green machine that had been working this land since before Brenda was even born. "That's a tractor," I said, leaning against the post and wiping sweat from my forehead. She let out a long, exaggerated sigh, the kind a teacher gives a child who keeps doing something wrong on purpose. "Whatever it is, it's an eyesore. We have an open house this weekend, and I cannot have potential buyers looking at agricultural debris. I am the president of the Homeowners Association, and I'm issuing you a formal warning. Next time it will be fine." I looked at her, then at the tractor, then back at her. "Brenda," I said, guessing her name before she even offered it, "I don't live in Whispering Pines. I'm not part of your association. This is a working farm." She adjusted her visor, her smile tight and completely lacking warmth. "We'll see about that," she said. Then she turned and marched back toward her subdivision, stepping around mud puddles with the precision of a gymnast. I honestly thought that would be the end of it. I figured she'd go back, check the property maps, realize she was wrong, and move on to someone else. I underestimated her. Over the next 3 months, my mailbox filled with her nonsense. Notices about the height of my grass in the south pasture. Letters complaining about the odor of livestock. I don't even own livestock anymore. Just one old barn cat. But apparently the smell of damp soil and alfalfa offended her. I ignored every letter, tossed them straight into the wood stove. I figured if I didn't give her attention, the problem would fade away. That was my first mistake. To someone like Brenda, silence isn't defeat. It's permission to push harder. The pride of my land is a massive oak tree, nearly 200 years old, sitting on a small ridge overlooking the valley. It's the kind of place where you sit quietly with a cup of black coffee and watch the sunrise. It's about a quarter mile from my house, but it borders the edge of Whispering Pines. Late September, Friday morning, Crisp air, clear blue sky, and a long list of chores ahead of me. I drove into town for parts, grabbed a sandwich, spent a few hours talking with the guys at the feed store, and headed home around 2 in the afternoon. As I came up the gravel driveway, I glanced toward the ridge. Then I stopped. I blinked, rubbed my eyes, looked again. There was a tent, not a small one, a massive white marquee tent with peaked roofs and little flags snapping in the breeze. I parked the truck, but left it running and walked up the hill, dry grass crunching under my boots. The closer I got, the worse it became. 100 white folding chairs arranged in perfect rows beneath my oak tree, floral arches wrapped in pink roses, a portable dance floor being assembled by a crew in matching polo shirts. And right in the middle of it all, directing everything like she owned the place, was Brenda. Today she was wearing a beige pantsuit, clutching her clipboard, barking orders at a teenager carrying linens. I walked straight up to the edge of the dance floor. "Brenda," I said quietly. She spun around. For just a moment, her eyes widened. But she recovered fast, slipping right back into that familiar condescending expression. "Oh, good, you're here," she said, gesturing down the hill. "You'll need to move that vehicle. It's ruining the sight lines." I stared at her, then at the setup, then back at her. "What is this, Brenda?" "It's a wedding," she said, folding her arms. "My niece is getting married tomorrow. This ridge has the best sunset in the county. It's perfect. This is my property," I said calmly. She rolled her eyes and gave a short laugh. "Oh, please. You have acres of land. You're not even using this spot. It's just an empty field. We'll only be here until Saturday night. Cleanup is Sunday morning. It's not a big deal. Try being a good neighbor for once. If you've ever had someone stand on land you own, look you straight in the eye, and calmly explain why they're entitled to it, you know exactly what that feels like. It's not loud anger. It's cold. It sits in your throat. You have 1 hour," I said. "Excuse me," she snapped. 1 hour to pack everything up and leave. After that, I'm calling the sheriff." She stepped closer, her perfume sharp and artificial. "Go ahead," she whispered. "We have an easement. This ridge is part of a scenic overlook. You can't stop us." I didn't argue. I walked back to my truck and called the sheriff. 2 deputies arrived about 40 minutes later. One older, one fresh out of the academy. We all walked up together. Brenda was waiting, smiling like plastic. "This man is harassing my workers," she said sweetly. The older deputy listened, looked at her paperwork, looked at me, then shook his head. "I can't verify property lines out here today. This is a civil matter." "A civil matter?" I repeated. "You'll have to take it to court Monday. I can't shut down a rental setup like this without proof." I looked at Brenda. She was smiling like she'd already won. The deputies left. She went back to her decorations. I walked down to my barn and sat in the quiet, dust drifting in the light. I wasn't going to court. I wasn't letting them have that wedding. But the deputy was right. I couldn't touch the tent. That's when Dave showed up. He handed me a root beer, leaned against the wall, and looked out at the ridge. "Big tent," he said. "Yeah." "Yours?" "No." He took a sip, then glanced at the manure spreader, sitting in the shadows. "Grass looks thin up there," he said. "It does." "Needs fertilizer." "It does." We got to work. 2 hours later, the spreader was hooked up, filled to the brim with the strongest liquid manure we could get. Saturday afternoon came. Perfect weather. Light breeze blowing straight toward the ridge. Guests arrived, dressed in suits and silk, music floating down the hill. At 4 o'clock, I climbed onto the tractor, turned the key, the engine roared, and I drove, slow, steady, right along the edge of my property. Then I engaged the spreader. The machine came alive, and a thick brown mist shot into the air, carried perfectly by the wind straight into the tent. It didn't hit all at once. It drifted, settled, a fine, invisible rain. The smell reached them first. Then the panic. Music stopped. People stood. Voices rose. Then the droplets landed on tablecloths, flowers, dresses, polished shoes. Chaos broke loose. And Brenda? She ran toward me, furious, screaming. Then her heel caught in the ground, and she fell, hard, straight into the freshly fertilized grass. She got up covered in mud and manure, looking like something dragged out of the swamp. I didn't stop. I finished the job and drove back down. By evening, the entire setup was gone. No lawsuit ever came. And a week later, standing under that oak tree with a cup of coffee, I looked down at the pasture. Dave was right. The grass had never looked better.